HOA Karen called the cops when my wife returned from USS Truman. Too bad. She outranked them all. What would you do if your spouse came home after 9 months at sea, stepped out of her car in full dress uniform, and your HOA president called 911 claiming she was an armed impersonator? Because that's exactly what happened the day my wife came home from the USS Truman. My name's Thomas. I work in emergency systems for the county, and my wife, Commander Danny Rivera, serves in the United States Navy. After nearly a year deployed in the Atlantic aboard the Truman, her ship finally returned to port, and she was given 3 weeks well-earned leave. We planned everything. Cleaned the house. Got her dress blues pressed. The neighbors even chipped in for a small welcome home banner in the front yard. Nothing over the top. Just a simple sign, an American flag, and a fresh-cut lawn. But none of that mattered to Karen Albright. She lived 3 doors down, but you'd think she ran the entire block like a military base, only without the honor, rank, or chain of command. Heavy-set, mid-60s, and constantly red in the face, Karen had been the self-appointed president of our HOA for 5 years. We never actually voted her in. She just showed up one day with a clipboard, a whistle, and a bad attitude. Her hobbies included screaming at dogs for barking too freely and citing residents for unpatriotic holiday lighting schemes. She didn't like me. But more than that, she hated Danny. Maybe it was the uniform. Maybe it was the medals. Or maybe it was the fact that Danny had once corrected her about a fake rule she tried to enforce regarding flagpole height regulations. So when Danny pulled into our driveway that morning, still in her navy blues, with her cover perfectly squared and her service stripes catching the light, Karen did what she always does. She panicked. She marched across the street, wheezing, red-faced, clipboard in one hand and phone in the other. I was already outside, opening the car door for Danny, when I saw her approaching like a battleship with bad breath. Karen pointed at my wife like she'd just caught a fugitive. "Who is this? This person is impersonating military personnel. That's a felony, you know." Danny turned and raised one eyebrow, calm as ever. "Good morning to you, too." Karen stepped closer. "That's a real Navy uniform. She's pretending to be someone she's not. I'm calling the police." "I am someone," Danny said. "Commander Danny Rivera, USS Truman. You want to see my ID?" But Karen had already dialed. She told the 911 dispatcher there was a woman in a stolen Navy uniform loitering outside a house in the community, possibly armed. "Karen," I said, stepping between them, "this is my wife. This is her home, and she just got off deployment. I've never seen her before." Karen shouted, "And there are protocols about strangers in uniform showing up unannounced." Danny didn't speak. She just opened her badge wallet and held it up, Navy ID, Pentagon clearance card, and security stamp all laid out like a perfect fan. Karen didn't even look. She was too busy giving the dispatcher a rundown of Danny's appearance like she was describing a burglary suspect. 15 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up. The officers stepped out, hands cautiously near their belts. Then Danny turned, stood at attention, and saluted. "Good morning, officers. Commander Rivera, Navy Intelligence. Recently returned from USS Truman. May I help you?" The younger officer blinked. "Wait, Commander." "That's right," Danny said, handing over her ID. "I'm the one she called about." Karen ran toward the cops like they were her personal bodyguards. "Arrest her," she screamed. "That's a stolen identity." The older officer looked at Danny's ID, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, she outranks us." Karen froze. "What?" The cop nodded. "She's active Navy. Verified. This isn't impersonation. This is patriotism." Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a malfunctioning garage door. "But she didn't tell me she was coming home. We have procedures. There's no HOA law against military homecomings," I said, "even if your little handbook says otherwise." That's when twist number 1 came. Officer Ramirez quietly asked Danny if she'd like to press charges for false reporting. And the thing is, she could have. But Danny didn't flinch. "No, let's go higher," she said. "I want this documented because this is now a matter of civil rights obstruction against a federal officer." Ramirez raised his eyebrows. "That's going to go beyond our precinct." "You bet it is." Karen didn't go quietly. She rarely did anything quietly. But as the officers stepped back and respectfully saluted my wife, something in her face cracked. She looked at Danny like she was a glitch in the HOA Matrix, a woman she couldn't intimidate, couldn't find, couldn't erase. You people think you can just wear a uniform and do whatever you want, she snapped. This is my neighborhood. I run this street. Danny stepped forward, slow and steady, her voice low enough to sound calm, but strong enough to carry authority through a storm. No, ma'am. You run an HOA, but this is still America. And I've fought for it longer than you've patrolled this cul-de-sac. Karen went silent. Not because she agreed, but because she had finally realized what we'd all known. She'd pushed too far, one clipboard too many. And then came twist number 2. The next morning, we got a knock on our door. It was Officer Ramirez, not in uniform this time. He handed Danny a sealed envelope from the State Military Liaison Office. Turns out, word of the 911 call and the way Danny had been treated in uniform had reached the Department of Defense's Civil Rights Division. Karen didn't just file a false report. She had interfered with a federal officer in uniform during active leave status on federally recorded property. That alone could have been enough for a misdemeanor. But the state found more. Because of Karen's long history of targeting veterans in the community, including an Air Force couple who were fined for flying their retirement flag, and a Marine widow whose son's service dog was too large for HOA standard breed restrictions, the pattern became clear. Systemic HOA abuse against military families. And it exploded. Danny gave a quiet statement. Calm, composed, factual. But the community? They weren't quiet. One by one, neighbors came forward. They'd had enough of Karen's threats. Her handwritten citations. Her emergency HOA meetings where no votes ever happened. She'd fined a man for repainting his porch too patriotically. She'd warned another for having too many American flags for Memorial Day. And the worst? She'd doctored the HOA charter to remove the clause protecting active-duty military homeowners from aesthetic citations. That was a federal housing violation. By the end of the week, the county HOA board, yes, there's a real thing, issued a cease and desist to Karen, revoking her authority, suspending all HOA activity, and initiating an investigation into fraudulent documentation and civil harassment. Karen was removed as president. Permanently. Her authority gone. Her clipboard confiscated as evidence. And a cherry on top, the block came together and unanimously voted to rename the little private park at the end of the cul-de-sac. It used to be called Fernview Commons. Now, Commander Rivera Memorial Grove. They unveiled it at dusk with flags flying and candles lit. The kids wore Navy stickers. Paul, the old Marine who lives across the street, gave a little speech with a trembling hand and a proud voice. Karen didn't attend. She'd already packed up and moved to her sister's place out of town. No one helped her load the truck. And as for Danny, she didn't gloat. She just stood beside me in civilian jeans, hand resting on the new park bench, and whispered, I didn't want this. I just wanted to come home. And that's what makes her the strongest person I know. So now I ask you, was Danny wrong to stand tall in the uniform she earned? Or was at the moment our neighborhood finally remembered what respect really looks like? The end.